It was okay, he said. It didn't matter that she had no children or that she was older than him. Fate had sent her to him, to be his wife and a mother to his little Mia. Alina, a 40-year-old woman, polished and graceful, with fiery copper curls and striking green eyes, could hardly believe her luck. Was it truly possible for life to turn back toward happiness after all this time? She had met Lucas completely by chance, just when she had nearly stopped believing in chances altogether. She had hired his company to fix her roof. They botched the job terribly. With no real hope for a solution, Alina called the number on the business card she had saved. "If anything's wrong, give us a call," it had promised. She had expected silence on the other end, disappointment once again. After all, disappointment had been a loyal companion to her throughout life. Orphaned young, left to the fragile care of her aging grandmother, Alina had fought to grow up and survive. Her grandmother, kind and hardworking, had been slipping into forgetfulness even from Alina's earliest memories. Somehow, through it all, Alina managed to finish nursing school, working long shifts as an orderly, fighting to keep a crumbling home together, raising her two younger brothers almost single-handedly. Money was never enough. Time was never enough. There were nights she thought she wouldn't make it, until life, in its strange, secretive kindness, threw her a lifeline. While tossing out her grandmother's ancient mattress, Alina noticed the seams splitting apart. She thought perhaps she could wash the cover and use it again, and as she tugged it open, she found something she never expected. Hidden inside, over 300,000 rubles, savings her grandmother had never spoken of, perhaps even forgotten she had hidden. Those hidden bills paid for the funeral and allowed Alina and her brothers to survive a little longer. Eventually, the boys grew into men and moved away to the far north, taking jobs on remote shifts. They called at first, sometimes sent money. Later, marriage, children, their own busy lives, and the calls slowed, then stopped altogether. Alina stayed behind, alone. When she was past 30, she did marry, more from exhaustion than love. Andrew, a doctor in the local hospital, had proposed with brutal honesty. "I drink," he had said. "I might lose my job. I don't love you, but you're 15 years younger and you won't leave, so let's survive together." It wasn't the kind of proposal that filled a girl's heart with dreams, but Alina, too tired to argue, almost accepted. "I'll think about it," she said, her voice a whisper against the cynicism of his words. "There's nothing to think about," Andrew replied harshly. "It's not like there's a line of men waiting for you." He added that another man, Gregory, a strong, kind-hearted nurse who had quietly admired Alina, would surely turn away if he found out she couldn't have children. The cruelty of that pierced her deeply. Gregory was someone she had imagined building a real life with, strong as a mountain, yet gentle as a spring wind, loved by everyone, trusted by everyone. But after Andrew's poison spread, Gregory began to avoid her. He congratulated her on her supposed engagement with a stiff smile and quickly left town, transferring to a hospital in a distant city where he could study to become a doctor himself. And so, Alina married Andrew. What followed were years of slow despair. Andrew drank more, cheated often, and when she complained, he sneered, "You bore me. A real wife would inspire better. It's your fault." When she had finally had enough and demanded a divorce, Andrew responded with vicious gossip, whispering lies in every corner of their small town, that she had affairs with patients, that she had lost all shame. Some people believed him, others didn't. But the damage was done. No one sought Alina's heart anymore. And then came Lucas. When he called her back about the roof, when he came personally to oversee the repairs, something stirred inside her. Watching him work, helping his employees with his own hands, flashing her a smile so bright and earnest. She felt for the first time in years a trembling in her chest that had nothing to do with fear. It seemed impossible, but Lucas, young, handsome, alive, looked at her as if she was the most beautiful woman he had ever seen. "How can someone so enchanting live alone?" he teased gently. Flustered, Alina laughed. "Maybe I'm too picky, still waiting for a prince." "If you're still waiting," he said, "maybe you were waiting for me." Lucas began visiting her more often. His presence filled the empty rooms of her house with warmth and light. He brought energy, laughter, and hope. Slowly, impossibly, Alina let herself dream again. When he proposed marriage, she was already deeply attached not just to him, but to his little daughter Mia. The child had woven herself into Alina's heart like ivy on an old stone wall. Still, Alina made one condition. "If we marry," she said quietly, "I want to adopt Mia officially. She needs to know that I am not just someone passing through her life, but someone who takes responsibility for her forever." Lucas agreed without hesitation. Years passed in a kind of golden haze. Mia grew, calling Alina Mom with a warmth that melted every frozen place inside her heart. One day, as they worked together making crafts for a school event, Mia looked up shyly and said, "Mom, you're not like other moms. I feel it. You're like my real mom." Alina felt tears burn behind her eyes, but she only smiled, hugging the girl tighter. Life, it seemed, had finally smiled upon her. If you feel the pulse of emotion in these words, imagine how many twists life can still offer. If you've ever wondered whether it's too late for your own new beginning, stay with this story. Something remarkable lies ahead. It was on one of those quiet evenings, as they embroidered little animals with leftover beads from a forgotten past, that Mia asked a question that set a chill in Alina's heart. "Mom, why do you say you're not like the others? Did Daddy have other wives before you?" Mia's voice was so small, so afraid of the answer, that Alina's heart ached. She smiled gently, smoothing the child's dark hair. "Why do you ask, honey?" The little girl looked down, fiddling with the thread in her hands. "Because he brings women home sometimes. He marries them, but they don't stay. They always want things, money, the apartment. Then Daddy sends them away." Mia's green eyes, so like Alina's own, filled with tears. "But if he sends you away, I'll go with you. I don't care, you're my real mom." Alina hugged her fiercely, vowing silently to never let anyone tear them apart. Later that night, when Lucas came home, she asked him carefully, "Why didn't you tell me you were married before?" Lucas stiffened. "And why does it matter now?" he snapped, a strange, cold edge in his voice that she had never heard before. "It matters," she said softly, "because I need to know the truth about the man I married." Lucas shrugged. "They left me when I ran into trouble. Gold diggers, all of them." That should have been enough for her to understand. But love blinds the heart, even a heart that has already been broken once before. Soon, the ground beneath her feet began to crumble. The apartment they lived in wasn't his. It was mortgaged, and the payments hadn't been made in months. Lucas owed debts so large they swallowed any hope of a future. And worse still, he had borrowed money from his previous wives, signing promises he never kept. When Alina confronted him, desperate to believe they could still find a way, Lucas laughed, a hard, bitter sound. "Let's be honest, you just wanted to play house. You're old, desperate, and no one else wanted you. You were convenient, never asked for anything, raised my kid for me, but the show's over now. I'm leaving the country." "And Mia?" Alina whispered, feeling her heart tear open. "I'll dump her in foster care. Lucas said, his voice as casual as if he were discussing taking out the trash. "I'm done. I only kept her because her grandfather sent money. But he died. Now there's nothing left to get." Alina couldn't breathe. Her left side began to go numb. In a distant, clinical corner of her mind, she knew the signs: stroke, or worse. "Call an ambulance," she begged, the words slurring from only one side of her mouth. "Please, Lucas." But he only walked away. Alina managed to reach her phone and dial for help before collapsing in the hallway. She barely registered the medics lifting her into the ambulance. Only one small hand clutched hers, Mia's, and a familiar voice soothed her. "Don't worry, you're going to be all right." It was Gregory. Of all the doctors who could have been on call that day, it was him. For the next month, Alina lived between shadows, fighting for her life. Her body was battered, but her spirit refused to break. When she was finally strong enough to speak, she learned the full story. Lucas had indeed abandoned Mia, signing away his rights without a second thought. It was Gregory who helped her hire a lawyer. Gregory who stood by her side through the endless court dates. Gregory who quietly paid for what she could not. Mia became her daughter, officially and forever. As for Lucas, he vanished overseas, running from debts and shame. He never called, never wrote. The old wounds Alina had buried now bled anew, but she had no choice but to heal, for Mia's sake. And even as her heart struggled, even as her body grew weary and worn, she fought to build a life from the ashes once more. If you've ever felt abandoned, broken, left to rebuild from ruins others left behind, remember, sometimes life hides its greatest blessings behind what first feels like the cruelest betrayals. Sometimes what seems like an ending is only the beginning of a deeper kind of love. Back in the small house that had weathered so many storms, Alina began again. Her savings were thin, her health fragile, but Mia's smile was her daily sunrise. The little girl blossomed in the rural school. "The kids here are nicer than in the city, Mom," she said one day, brushing her hair in front of the cracked mirror. "Vova even taught me some moves to defend myself, but honestly, I don't really need them. He always watches out for me." Vova, a brave, clever boy from her class, became Mia's silent guardian. He was rough around the edges, but fiercely loyal and secretly in love with Mia, though he was too shy to say it. Together they dreamed up small ways to help Alina. Selling handmade keychains crafted with the last of the magical beads and the doll eyes her grandmother had hoarded decades ago became their secret project. Every coin earned was a tiny act of defiance against despair. But the years weighed heavily on Alina. The minor stroke had weakened her heart, and the constant worry left her exhausted. Sometimes she would fall asleep in the middle of the day, Mia quietly covering her with a blanket before slipping out to continue their work. Selling by the roadside was risky. Mia knew it, but there was no other way. They needed money, for medicine, for food, for survival. One chilly evening, as the last of the sunlight bled into the fields, Mia and Vova set up their little table once again. Hardly anyone stopped. The old women who sold apples and honey had already packed up and gone home. "Maybe we should go, Mia," Vova said, glancing nervously at the growing darkness. "My dad's going to notice the bike's gone if I'm not careful." But Mia shook her head stubbornly. "We can't go home empty-handed, Vova. Mom needs her medicine. If we sell even one more, it'll be worth it." So they stayed, two small figures huddled together against the chill, guarding their dreams in the dying light. In the distance, a limousine approached, its headlights cutting through the dusk like twin swords. Inside, a man noticed them, two children alone on the roadside. "Should we stop?" the driver asked hesitantly. The man in the back seat, Oleg, peered closer. Something about the sight pierced him deeply. He thought of old friends, old promises, old pains. "Pull over," he said quietly. He stepped out into the cold evening air, walked over to the table and smiled. "How much for these?" he asked, his voice warm and kind. 50 rubles, Mia stammered. "But if you buy them all, we'll make it cheaper." Oleg chuckled. "Rubles or dollars?" Mia blinked, confused. "If you want dollars, we can find some later," Vova added hastily, trying to sound businesslike. Oleg laughed and nodded to his driver, who handed him a thick wad of cash. Without counting, Oleg pressed several large bills into Mia's trembling hand. Tears welled up in her eyes. "It's too much," she whispered. "Call it a memory," Oleg said gently. "When I was a boy, someone I cared for made toys just like these, handmade with love. Sometimes the smallest things hold the biggest stories." Mia stared at him wide-eyed. "You're Oleg the Rich, aren't you? From our village?" "That's what they call me, I guess," he said with a sheepish grin. He didn't say that he had grown up dirt poor, or that everything he had built with pain, sweat, and sheer willpower. Those stories could wait. "Would you like a ride home?" he asked. "My driver can take you." Mia and Vova looked at each other. It was late, it was cold, and something about this man, the kindness in his eyes, made them trust him. As they rode toward home in the warm, luxurious car, Mia felt a glimmer of hope she hadn't dared to feel in months. Sometimes the road back to the light is paved with unexpected kindness. And sometimes it's the strangers we meet in our darkest hours who remind us what family, what love can truly mean. When the limousine pulled up to Alina's small house, she could hardly believe her eyes. Who could possibly be visiting them in such a car? For a trembling moment, her heart hoped. Maybe Lucas had come to his senses. Maybe he had come to beg for forgiveness, to take Mia back into his arms. But no. From the car stepped Oleg, a man she vaguely remembered from the village, a friend of Gregory's, if memory served. And behind him, to her astonishment, were Mia and Vova, carrying the empty table and a bag full of unsold dreams. "Oleg," she said, wiping her hands on her apron, "what brings you here?" He smiled warmly. "I have a message for you, and some good news." He ushered the kids inside, laughing as they chattered about their adventure. Over tea and a plate of homemade pies, Oleg spoke plainly. "Gregory wants to give you his apartment," he said. "He wants you and Mia to have a real home, a safe place." Alina's heart clenched. She shook her head. "I can't accept that. My house may be old, but the land it stands on is valuable. Developers are already buying up the lots around here. When the time comes, I'll sell it and provide for Mia myself." Oleg leaned back, studying her with thoughtful eyes. "You're stubborn, just like Gregory said you were." He smiled. "But tell me one thing, Alina. Do you love him?" The question pierced her deeper than she expected. She opened her mouth to deny it, to retreat behind the walls she had built after so many betrayals. But she couldn't lie. Not to herself, not anymore. "Yes," she whispered. "I love him. I always have. But it's too late. I'm too old, too broken. He deserves someone better, someone who can give him a real family." Oleg shook his head with a small, knowing smile. "You're wrong about one thing. Gregory doesn't want anyone else. He never did. And as for your heart, broken things can heal stronger than before. You just have to let them." At that moment, the door creaked open again, and there he was. Gregory, standing in the entryway with a bouquet of flowers in one hand and a small velvet box in the other. He crossed the room in 3 long strides and dropped to one knee before her. "Alina," he said, his voice trembling. "Will you marry me? We'll figure everything else out later. I'll adopt Mia. We'll build a life. Together." Alina wanted to say no, to tell him it wasn't fair, that she was sick, that she might not have long. But Mia was already bouncing with joy, and Vova whooped in delight, and Oleg leaned back in his chair, looking immensely satisfied. "Only one question," Alina whispered, her voice catching. "Do you love me, Greg?" He smiled then, a real smile, the kind that could light up even the darkest night. "I have loved you every day of my life," he said, "and I will keep loving you no matter how many more days we get." She could have hesitated. She could have clung to fear, but something deeper, something truer guided her. She held out her hand. Gregory slipped the ring onto her finger. The house erupted into laughter, cheers, the kind of warmth that not even the coldest winters could extinguish. Sometimes, love does not roar in like a storm. Sometimes, it returns like a long-forgotten song, soft but unyielding, a melody that was always written into your soul. And sometimes, just when you think all your chances have slipped away, life gives you one more, a real one. If you've ever believed your story was finished, that your chance at love, at happiness was gone, let this be a whisper in your heart. It's never too late. Not for love, not for healing, not for you. A year passed like a single heartbeat. Under Gregory's steady care, Alina's health against every prognosis began to mend. Doctors, at first skeptical, shook their heads in wonder. Sometimes the body listens when the heart finds a reason strong enough to keep fighting. And then the miracle they had stopped daring to dream of. Alina discovered she was expecting a child. The risks were high, and fear gnawed at the edges of her joy. But every time she saw Gregory's eyes light up when he touched her growing belly, every time Mia curled beside her whispering dreams of holding her baby brother, Alina knew she had chosen the right path. Mia grew into a radiant teenager, beautiful and fierce, with her father's thick dark hair and her mother's wise green eyes. She continued to craft her small, exquisite keychains, selling them at local markets, saving every penny to help her family. And alongside her was Vova, who, though still clumsy and bashful, stood like a young knight at her side. Two hearts growing up together under the wide village skies. The old house that had once felt so heavy with sorrow now hummed with laughter, the smell of pies baking in the oven, the soft creak of new life in every room. Mia still kept a small secret box under her bed, a box filled with memories of the days when they had sold keychains by the roadside, fighting for every breath, every crumb of hope. She never forgot those days, and because she never forgot, she grew up grateful. Alina, lying awake sometimes at night, watching the stars scatter across the vast forgiving sky, would wonder how it was even possible to feel so full after being so empty for so long. If you've ever stood at the edge of giving up, if you've ever whispered into the darkness, please, just one more chance. Know this, life sometimes grants those prayers in the most unexpected ways. And speaking of unexpected blessings, recently, a discovery stunned scientists and nature lovers alike, a rare purple shell found deep in the untouched wilds that may naturally enhance the body's ability to burn fat even while resting. Early findings suggest it could support those longing to reclaim their energy, their confidence, and the body they deserve, without punishing diets or relentless exercise. The full story of this extraordinary discovery and why so many are now talking about it with such hope awaits you quietly in the video description. It might just be the fresh start you've been silently wishing for. Because sometimes it's not too late to begin again. Not for your heart, not for your dreams, not for the life still waiting for you.